Well, it's final credits coming back at you again. Hi, everyone. We're going to talk about a movie that came out on Amazon Prime recently called Air. This is a movie that essentially tells a story of how Michael Jordan came to, or at least was accepted by Nike to create arguably the greatest sneaker of all time, the Air Jordan, obviously. And we are told the kind of like nooks and crannies about it in kind of like a detailed more version of the events that happened. Now, the movie in and of itself, I thought was pretty good. I thought it was acted out very well. I thought the script was very well done. All the actors were on point for this. I loved the entire cast. But I felt like this movie was not necessary, especially because when you have a documentary that came out a couple of years ago. This documentary was called The Last Dance. It came out on Netflix. And I felt like it told this story a little bit better personally. Even with a movie that has like so much more detail into it that could actually tell it more, I felt like it was told a little bit better in the documentary. This was amazingly acted out. I thought it was great. I thought it was still very good, but guys, what do you think? Am I crazy? Am I crazy?
Yeah, you're crazy. Okay.
There you go.
I'm going to disagree with you and tell you that, yeah, the documentary did it better because it's a documentary as opposed to a big budget movie
that is also supposed to retell true events that happened.
No, not retell. It's based on a true story. There's a difference. So here's what I think about this movie. I enjoyed it, and I have a big problem with it. Okay. Actually, the problem I have with it is not the movie itself. It's the fact that Chris Tucker and Marlon Wayans need more serious roles because these two people, they can act their ass off in comedies and whatnot, but when they do something serious, you can see they need to be put into a situation where they could be serious.
Wholeheartedly.
Marlon Wayans, phenomenal in his role, right? And I was upset because, I mean, he played an what was it, the Olympic coach, right?
The assistant,
George Raveling.
Michael Jordan's assistant coach on the 1984 Olympic team.
Olympics, right? Okay, so I mean, I feel like they could have put him in more into there, and like he was in the movie for like 3 minutes. Yeah, at the bar scene. Yeah. That was it. So that's it. Realistically, though, he was phenomenal in it. And Chris Tucker, he was in the beginning of the movie. Better. He was great. Towards the end, when they're in that big conference room and they're meeting the Jordans, you got that Chris Tucker from when he was just like he's yelling and everything, like he's part of
Rush Hour.
Yeah, Rush Hour. I was like, whoa, like. Relax. Like you were doing so great. And then all of a sudden that last minute, you're like, why are you yelling like that? Relax. Other than that, I think this movie was great. I kind of got pissed off a little bit in the bar scene when they were focusing in and out of Matt Damon and Marlon Wayans because it looked like nobody knew how to focus that scene because it kept going in and out, in and out. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting a headache from this. Other than that, I think this movie was great. It showed a different a look on how we got the Jordans. Obviously, a little bit of it was a little bit, skewed and whatnot because they didn't make a sneaker in one weekend. But whatever. I think it was great. I really do. I enjoyed it. I like the fact that whoever they picked for Michael Jordan, we never got a face. That was kind of cool. I thought that was a little like it gave it a little like mystique type deal.
Nah,
but I got something to say about that, but I'll let you finish.
The fact that they had Viola Davis, that Michael Jordan chose as the actress to play his mother.
Absolutely.
Phenomenal.
She was great.
Yep.
Other than that, I think that's it.
So I like this movie. I like this movie a lot too. I felt like I came out of it learning more than I thought I was going to learn about like the whole deal and everything. Like, I mean, the fact that like this was the deal that started the trend of, you know, like athletes and whatnot. Like if they're making deals with companies like Nike or Adidas, that they get compensated directly from the revenue. Like that wasn't the case like ever before them. We had that scene with Viola Davis and Matt Damon where you know they were almost going to finish the deal, but Viola Davis was like, but if my son gets a certain percentage of revenue, and they had that whole dialogue between them, which I thought was actually one of the best scenes of the movie. And it made sense, and it really gave you like a window into like, you know, how businesses worked back then and how things really weren't fair, like towards like the, you know, athletes or anybody that those companies would be using for their products. And end of the day, it was all about, you know, pocketing as much cash as possible. So like, you know, seeing it like at the end of the movie, like, you know, like any biopic, it says like, you know, what's going on in the present day. Like they said, you know, from that day on, like it you know, there were, you know, multiple, I think like either like lawsuits or, you know, changes in like how like, you know, business practice would be going around with like companies like that. And it set like a new standard for how, you know, like those like athletes or celebrities or whoever would be compensated as they rightfully should, which I thought was a great aspect of the movie. I felt like the beginning, the very start of the movie was, you know, pretty strong enough. I felt like that the section after that, up until the first scene where Matt Damon visits the family, the Jordan family for the first time, was a little slow. After that, like things started to flow better, and you started to see where things were going. Regarding Michael Jordan himself, at first I was cool with like how they weren't showing him, they weren't focusing him. But then we have scenes where he's in the room and like they just skirt around his face or him having to talk at all. And it's like he's like literally like, at one point like Matt Damon, like or not Matt Damon, Jason Bateman, who's also in the movie. I thought he was also great in this movie. You know, he directly speaks to Michael Jordan, who isn't even facing him. He's facing the other way. He's just looking at something on the wall. He just ignores his question completely, Michael Jordan, and he just stays silent. Like I felt like I was watching a silent protagonist in a video game. So I was like, I like the initial idea of Michael Jordan not being shown or heard, other than like the phone call at the end. But you don't even see his face; you just hear his voice. But they were just the scenes that he's actually in the room. Just like, okay, that's, you know,
Johnny. The one thing I'm gonna say, that's actually the one time where this actually works. I feel, because you watch the movie, you know the entire like story and everything. Jordan never wanted to sign with Nike. He never wanted to give them the time of day. So that is the one time I feel like it works, where Bateman's like, oh, Michael, it's good to see you. And he's looking around like he doesn't care because he doesn't want to be there. The only reason why he's there is because his mom essentially grabbed him by the ear and said, you listen to these nice boys and you hear what they have to say. If you don't like what they don't have to say, then you don't have to sign with them.
I didn't get that. I didn't really get that from him. I thought like it was just him being like a teenager. I just thought it was him being like a teenager who didn't care about like business stuff. They're just like, do whatever.
This movie was not a Michael Jordan movie. This movie was a Mrs. Jordan's movie. It was all about how she got her son what needed to be done. Because if it wasn't for her, Michael Jordan himself says it. If it wasn't for my mother, I would have never got where I got today.
He's on record saying that again. Yep. Watch The Last Dance.
Think the movie, but then you know what? Then the movie really could have benefited having scenes between him and his mother arguing over what to do about the deal.
I also,
if you don't have those scenes, you don't really get a clear picture of what he's actually feeling. I didn't. Like you said, I mean, it makes sense what you're saying, but I didn't get that notion like from watching the movie myself. Because it's just, to me, it just seems like he's a teenager back then. He's just nonchalant. He doesn't care. He just cares about basketball.
He just wanted to bend,
which is also true.
Right. So like I didn't know he felt that strongly against it though, which is why I think it would have benefited to have him speak.
He loved Puma.
Here's another thing, not Fila, Adidas. Here's another thing. Adidas. They say it multiple times in the movie that like, yo, he hates us. He wants Adidas. He wants tracksuits. He loves those leather shoes. Blah blah blah. To the point where I got a tracker, and I'm like, they've said this I think 6 times. My God.
If I could say, Grim, Last Dance, great documentary. I watched it multiple times. I respectfully disagree with you. Also, like Michael Jordan is pop culture. So The Last Dance cover tells the whole story. So, and the part about the documentary where they talk about the shoe deal, it's just a small part. So like with anybody like a pop culture icon, Elvis, Michael Jackson, there's multiple stories. So here we're zooming in on one part of the story. And Johnny 64 said this is a Mrs. Jordan or Spade, did you say? Mrs. Jordan story. This is also a Sonny story. Matt Damon as Sonny was amazing.
Yeah.
That and the scene where he gives that passionate speech to Michael and his family was amazing. Another thing I wanted to add. So Michael Jordan, yes, got Viola Davis. Like, even though he wasn't directly involved, Ben Affleck did the respectable thing, went to Jordan himself. But like Michael Jordan hitting game-winning jump shots at the height of his career, not only with Viola Davis, he was also involved with involving Howard White, Chris Tucker's character, who was the VP of Jordan. I think even to this day under the Nike umbrella. So you know
Nike up until they created the Jordan brand? Yes, you're right.
Exactly. But did you know Michael Jordan said, "Oh, I think we should have Howard White in the movie." Ben Affleck and Matt Damon said, "Oh, we have the perfect person for this," and it was Chris Tucker, who they wanted to work with for a long time. Right. And Chris Tucker, and I agree with Spade, that he should have had more screen time, bigger, but Chris Tucker in a serious role nailed it. And if you, I don't know if you guys caught it, but when Sonny was strategizing with Howard, like, how can I get him? You were able to get, I believe the player, correct me if I'm wrong, might have been Moses Malone. He's like, Chris Tucker said, as Howard said, you got to go to the mama. The mother in the black family's the head of it and runs things, and that the light bulb went off in Sonny's mind. Jason Bateman, even though Jason Bateman as the Nike executive, was like, again, Sonny, no, don't.
Right? He was from their advertising section.
I believe so. I think I have it.
I think it was the advertisement, because he was the one that always talked about how we're going to spin this. Like, we're going to pay for the fines and everything like that. Yeah.
I don't think it was advertising, because he was the one like in charge of like the board meeting in the very beginning of like, all right, guys, who are we going to sign? We have a budget of X amount of money that we can spend. We could get 2 people. Jordan's automatically out. Absolutely not. We could get this guy and this guy. I don't think it was advertisement, but regardless, that doesn't matter right here.
And also great. Oh, go ahead, Grim.
No. Continue.
So at the time, 40 years ago, to compare how Nike is now to back then is still mind blowing. The story of Nike, their foundation is in running shoes. That was their meat and potatoes. But and like basketball division, like, we made all this millions of dollars. Why only giving us a small budget? And you want to spend it all on one player? Jordan hasn't stepped on an NBA court ever. He got cut from his high school team. I'm
glad they added that.
Yeah, they added that scene. Sonny talking to the kid who works behind the counter at 7-Eleven. But Converse was the it brand for the NBA. Adidas, yes, might have been MJ's favorite brand. It was big at the time because of Run DMC played it up. A side note, I love the 80s nostalgia that was thrown.
No, I'm going to stop you. No, I'm stopping. No. I'm going to stop you right there, because this is something I wanted to bring up. I get it. It took place in 84. I get it. You don't have to play every 80s song. You don't have to give us.
I thought the soundtrack was good. I was going to say that was.
Why not?
Listen to me. I'll tell you why. Because everyone is following Stranger Things now and shoving it down our throats. I'm sick of it.
That's
you're overthinking
already. It happened during the
Things
80s.
is fiction.
I don't need to be reminded of it every 10 minutes.
That was the whole point of the time period.
No, it's not the point of the movie. I don't care.
If you watch the montage, no.
No, it happened during 84.
Okay,
I
cool.
don't need to hear
Cool down a little bit.
single 80s song. I don't need to hear
Spade,
everything
bring up
that's
the-
happening.
the-
I don't
bring
need
up
to
the
see
rant- bring
a
up the rant
secretary
ticker.
playing with a slinky. It doesn't need to happen. Stop.
No,
Stop
but
this madness.
No. So no, let me explain. The whole
No, there
theme
is
of
no
the movie-
explanation.
There is
Stop
an
this
explanation.
mindless
There is an
violence.
explanation. Hold on, calm down, take a sip of water, chill for a second. Come back from
Johnny,
1984
you're
to
not getting it.
2023.
If you're going to defend this 80s craze,
I
you
will,
need to get up
because
out of your chair.
because it was a very like booming time in terms of business. Like the montage in the beginning of the movie showed all sorts of things that were going on, like like the Apple commercial, all this stuff. The things were a lot of businesses were exploding during that time. Nike was one of those businesses. That was the whole theme of the movie.
Okay, fine. You want to talk about a montage in the beginning? Fine. What about the rest of the movie?
The soundtrack was great.
No, not the soundtrack.
Awesome.
Everything else.
What do you want
I
to be like?
gotta look at the soundtrack now.
Do you want everything to look like it was in the 60s? No, but do you want everything to look like it was in the 60s? It takes place in the 80s. Like, I don't know what more you want.
But you don't need to bring up everything that was happening in the 80s too. I don't care.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
About the story that's being told to me.
But you have to set the
So you would be okay. Hold on.
It happened in 1984. That's it. You
right,
just
but
give us the time that it's happening.
Hold on, Grim. Hold on. You've been going on a 45-minute rant. Okay, so you're just
saying. Count. It's been a minute.
So you're saying in an 80s movie we can't have 80s music. So we're gonna have 2023. I'm not saying
that. No, listen, you don't need to revolve everything about.
Yes, you do. It's a time period.
It is a Nike movie about a guy signing on to get shoes. I don't need to hear everything and focusing about it all the time because.
But it's the shoe that changed pop culture, for crying out loud.
Happening. No, it keeps happening.
I want you to give me a specific scene.
Movie that is happening. Okay.
Of all
the specific scene of what you're talking about.
That is secretary playing with while she should be working. We have the fucking car phones. They're like, oh, they're brand new. They come in. Oh,
but that's what executives use.
The entire beginning of the movie. Fine, I'll give you the montage. You want a montage? Fine. I'll give you the 80s montage. I don't need to know everything else in the 80s that's happening right now. I really don't. I also don't need to know everything that's happening in the 80s in every future movie that takes place in the 80s. I get it. You like Stranger Things.
I don't think it's a Stranger Things thing.
I don't think so. I think
Stranger Things paved the way for people to be like, you know what? 80s was the greatest time period. Let's include it in every single movie that takes place in the 80s. I get it.
Yes.
The fact that I had to keep repeating.
No, you're not getting it.
Yeah, I get it.
You're not getting it at all.
I kept saying throughout the entire movie, yeah, I get it. It happened in the 80s. The fact that I had to continue doing that was insane. That's honestly my biggest takeaway about this entire movie. That was the number one thing. Yeah, I get it.
You're upset. You're upset about a movie that
I'm upset that it shoved it down my throat.
Hold on.
That's what I'm upset about.
Hold on. You're upset about a movie, okay, that takes place in the 80s, playing 80s music, wearing 80s clothes, driving 80s vehicles.
With 80s stuff.
Thank you for unmuting me. Yes, too much. Yes.
How is it too much? I don't get it.
It's in listen, it's focused upon it. Obviously, okay, clearly I'm in the wrong here because it's 3 out of 4. But
definitely
I'm bringing up a good point because you didn't see any of this before Stranger Things. And everyone is talking on it now. That's
not true because there was no 80s movies. There were no movies based in the 80s.
There were no movies. Come on.
No.
Spain. Movies that took place in the 80s didn't focus this much on it.
Let me give you a good example. Hold on. No. Let me give you an example.
They didn't.
When you were watching,
they didn't.
When you were watching Titanic, were you annoyed by oh my God, there's 1912 everywhere. I can't stand this. Why is everybody wearing these suits? What's up with the pocket? What's up with the pocket watches? What's up with the old fashioned everything?
No,
why is this ship running on steam? What's going on here?
To Grim's point,
yes, that's understandable.
To Grim's
and that's
point,
not understandable here.
To
I
Grim's
don't
point,
get the difference.
to Grim's point, he's just talking about the music, not the 80s
No, he's
culture.
not.
too.
No, I'm
We
No,
he's
established
talking
like
about
3 times.
everything.
We established 3
You're
times
not
it's not
paying
just the music with
attention,
him.
bro.
No,
I'm
it's-
talking about everything that happened. I'm like, this is way too much.
But this
But
isn't the
okay, then-
only biopic movie that is firmly established in a certain decade that shows themes of that decade. I don't know why this movie is such a problem with that all of a sudden. We've had other movies in history where
Grim just doesn't like
It's
Stranger
Not
Things.
like
That's what it is.
this.
He doesn't like
They
Stranger
just
Things,
shoved
and
it
he
down
thinks
your
that everything
throat.
with the 80s has to do with Stranger Things.
No, I don't. I just felt like it was shoved down my throat with this one. That's it. All right.
I think you-
want
I
me
think
to
you
stop
took
talking
it-
about it? I'll stop talking about it.
I think you took it. I think you took it a little too far in the sense where you're combining two things that have nothing to do with each other. Yes, Stranger Things pushed the 80s thing onto everyone. I agree with you on that. They may have gone a little bit too far. To say that Air did the same thing is totally different. It's totally different. They're just trying to tell you, hey, this is what was popular in the 80s. Because not everyone knows what was popular in the 80s. Forget about Stranger Things.
Watch Stranger Things and you'll know, apparently.
But that's the thing, though. Not everyone watches Stranger Things. And we're talking about
Netflix
a movie
disagrees.
that was based. Hold on. You're talking about a movie that was based on facts that happened in 1984, not a movie that was written in 2020 based on 1980. Totally different.
it's
You're not going
stuff
to
that's
change
based
my
on
mind.
fact
I get
versus
what you're
history.
saying, but you're not going to change my mind.
I'm
on
not
this.
trying to. I'm not trying to.
Well, I agree with Pancakes that I think it established the nostalgia pretty well too. Like I said, the soundtrack was great. The themes were great in my opinion. The montage set the scene because I think that was the point of the theme of the movie. But yeah, I think there were other aspects of the movie we could probably talk about still at this point. We've gone on long enough about this part.
Just so everyone knows, Grim hates the 80s.
Yes. You want to know why? Because you're not the 90s.
Yeah, you know what? But that I can agree with too.
There
The
you
90s are
go.
Objectively better.
So,
if we have a
overall,
biopic,
do we
if we have a
recommend
biopic
Air?
in the 90s? If we have a biopic in the 90s and there's 90s themes, I don't want to hear you complain.
I swear,
that
if I hear Fall Out Boy or something, I'm gonna get very pissed off.
Mhm.
Grim, guess
Or
what?
Chumbawamba, or something stupid like that.
Grim, guess what? Guess what decade Bumblebee takes place in? With 80s nostalgia.
And
That's
it was
true, too.
all
Yeah.
over the place.
Yeah, Pancakes. You want to try that again? You'll want to find out when the new Transformers movie is coming out. Open
In the
a book,
90s.
read some facts, then come back to me, Pancakes. Till then, sit down, drink your syrup.
Ooh, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, do the doobly-doo thing that he says to do on down low below.
I'll
I
drink
like
my
the-
syrup. I'll drink my syrup.
Like,
We're watching 80s culture
comment,
in Air.
subscribe, hit the notification bell, argue with me. Let me know down in the comments how wrong. I kind of hate it too because I actually did genuinely like this movie. Fuck. I did it to myself.